Today we're changing up Coach's Corner a little bit and not just changing up where we sit. Now, what we normally do is we get your questions on under any of our videos, and then we sit around the office and we discuss them, figure out what the solution is, and then we present them to you in a Coach's Corner. But we figured that actually you'd probably get quite a lot of benefit from listening to those discussions that we have in the office about what's best to answer these questions.
So here we are. What's the first question then? Let's go.
Okay, let's go. Remember, if you have any of your own questions in the comments down below this one, you can ask them. And next week we could be answering that one. And also, if you like this new format, let us know in the comments down below. Okay, first question. This is from Pishemek. Hashtag GTN Coaches Corner. What is your opinion about training in the morning/afternoon? And are there any differences you've noticed? I usually train around 6 to 7 p.m. and got quite used to it, but since some weeks I tried to change a bit and incorporate some morning training as well. I noticed that besides my watch saying in the mornings that I'm a piece of crap, a bit harsh, in the evening I'm a +6 according to my watch. I might agree there with my watch actually, as 2 months ago I ran a 21:35k in the evening and today I ran a 22:45k in the morning. I've been training consistently for 3 years at Olympic distance. Number one, is there a case that morning versus evening training, in your opinion, may be causing the difference in performance? And if yes, should I try to train mostly in the same part of the day as the race? I mean, would training around those race hours bring any benefit? And three, does my training plan suck and should I change it immediately?
What are you, morning or an evening? I think I know the answer.
Yeah, I'm a morning, definitely morning. I've always been a morning. I don't know whether that's a South African thing though, because
you guys get like 5 a.m. for rides.
Exactly.
I'm definitely a morning person, but weirdly, when it comes to kind of work, like on my laptop, I seem to find like a second wind in the evening, and I can really like focus. Maybe it's because I'm not being distracted by people like yourself talking to me.
Probably, yeah. I'm a morning person, both training and work. I think once I get to after 4 or 5 p.m., I'm just checked out, can't concentrate. I think what I have found though, because I obviously have kids and then they need supervision, so Jody then trains in the morning and I can't train in the morning, so I've then been training in the evening, and often it's been turbos at 9 p.m. and stuff. I don't dislike it. Mm-hmm. And now when I train in the morning, I found it a little bit less comfortable. And I think it is very, very much a habit thing. Like if you are sleeping at the same time every day and waking up at the same time every day, your body wakes up ready to go. If yesterday you slept till 7:30 and today you woke up at 5:30 to do a session, you are going to feel lousy in that session.
I was going to say there's a lot around sleep cycles, timings of eating, all these sort of things. Because I think to a degree, some things can be changed. You can feel better in the morning and perform better in your sessions in the morning. But at the end of it, I think some people are actually better suited to morning and evening as hard as you try, I believe.
I think there's also other factors though, like feeding. Some people do better with a good energy level, blood sugar level, and other people wake up and they're ready to go. They can. I would eat nothing or maybe have a rusk, if you don't know what a South African.
I know what rusk is. I love a rusk.
And a cup of coffee, and that was it. I was out the door. Yeah. In fact, when I was a kid, I used to wake up and have literally a glass of water and go and run 7 to 8 Ks before school. And I think that's something that different people can cope with and other people can't.
And also, as you say, you've been doing that for years. So your body's kind of adapted to that and being able to, the way in which you metabolize energy and all this sort of stuff. So there's so much to this really in terms of like how you can perform better. But I'd say for this chap, sorry, I've forgotten his name, but obviously finds he performs better in the evenings. And he's thinking about this race coming up. And worrying actually, the race starts early in the day. So should I switch up all my training to start doing things in the morning so I better perform? I would actually say, look, just commit to what you're clearly feeling better, the time of day that you feel better at, and get the most bang for your buck or the biggest gains in that training. I would probably recommend doing the odd sessions earlier in the day around that start time where possible, because you don't want to turn up on the race day, right, and just be absolutely
Well, I think the race day is a different kettle of fish entirely. Race day, you're excited, your adrenaline's going to be going, there's a whole start thing and everything, and actually that any kind of sense of fatigue or any kind of drowsiness that you might have on a normal day is completely out the window.
Oh no, I totally agree, but then I think things like your nutrition and the timings that you eat and actually making sure that you can get that bowl of cereal through you, and actually maybe I shouldn't have the bowl of cereal, all those little nuances that maybe actually are better to just figure out. And I'm not saying you need to do it on a regular basis, but every so often in your training, it wouldn't hurt to sort of do every so often.
On this topic, what about a race that's in the afternoon or evening? Have you
Yeah, I was going to say it because actually we're obviously morning people, and then occasionally we've been presented with races in the afternoon, and that has absolutely...
Hate it.
Yeah, me too.
I hate it.
Yeah.
I really struggle with it. I
don't know what to do.
I wake up at 7 and I'm like, should I be eating breakfast? I can't get to 2 p.m. start without eating breakfast.
Big breakfast and a smaller lunch, or should I get... Yeah, it's...
What I generally tend to do is just like 2 pieces of toast and then maybe a coffee and then like try and push through. But I always feel like I'm starving about 2 hours before the race starts, but I don't want to eat anything. Really awkward.
Yeah.
Can we just start all races at
Maybe
6 a.m.?
you should enter some afternoon races.
Yeah. Okay, next question. The Mixley. Dear GTN team, I'm training for the 70.3 Worlds. Because I don't have a trainer or external training plan, I'm wondering, as it is still a long time till the race in November, would you advise to stretch out the training phases, the base, the build, the peak, over 9 months, or repeat the whole training phases twice? Thanks a lot, Marco.
No, nice. Well, I'm going to presume, obviously, given that he's going for 70.3 Worlds, he's obviously a decent athlete. He's got quite a lot of training under his belt. Whereas if it was someone that was quite new to the sport, I'd probably say you can actually get away with a longer base phase just to generally gain fitness and allow your body time to adapt. But they clearly got more kind of fitness already. I would say, and I reckon you probably agree with this, that the 70.3 Worlds is a long way away, right? It's right at the end of the year. For me, I'd struggle with that. It's like light. I could barely see the light at the end of the tunnel. It's like, exactly. What am I even training for? I would probably try and break up the year a little bit. Maybe have some goals along the way. Be that maybe a smaller race or something that you can focus on. So actually start splitting the year up a little bit, don't you?
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Intermediate goals. It could even be another half potentially, but it could just be a half marathon. It could just be a specific bike race, something that you can focus on, and then maybe 16 to 20 weeks before the Worlds, you can focus on a proper build block where you're getting ready for the race. I would say that trying to focus now on 70.3 Worlds is not a great idea. And I also don't think what a lot of people tend to do is, I've got a 12-week program. I'll do the 12-week program and then I'll restart the 12-week program. That'll get me to 24 weeks. And I mean, in theory, essentially you'll be training the whole way through that, but you won't be working on the right things at the right time. And that's definitely not the solution. I know it's the kind of thing that a lot of beginners would tend to do, but that is not the solution. Also, doubling every week, like doing each week twice the whole way through, that is also not the solution. You need to be getting the most out of your body. You need to be challenging it, and doing a really long, slow build is really mentally difficult, as you say. But then also trying to extend it all the way out and having a massive peak phase at the end is also not going to work.
Well, I actually think you'd find you peak way too early.
Yeah.
I reckon you'll just find you're absolutely flying around sort of June, July time and then struggling to hang on to it.
I think you'll find that now when you've entered the race, you're extremely motivated for about 6 weeks. Then you'll be like, wow, this race is still miles away. Yeah. You'll lose motivation entirely until probably too late when you're like 12 weeks away. And then you'll be like, I really need to get going now.
Never done that before.
You never? Yeah, I don't believe you. Okay, next question. Queso7166. I have a goal of wanting to complete a sub 1 hour sprint triathlon in late August 2025. However, I'm used to completing longer distance events and training. I'm only doing sprint trials this year due to recovering from a shoulder surgery. How should I back off my typical distance work and interchange it with speed work to complete my goal? Or maybe, better put, what is a good ratio of speed work to distance work if I want to go fast as opposed to far?
This kind of sounds like me, bar the shoulder surgery. I'm basically
You're going
just doing
short.
sprint. Yeah, I'm going short. I'm quite enjoying it. Yeah.
What it sounds like this guy doesn't really have a time constraint that he's working around, which doesn't sound very much like you at the moment.
That is true. Yeah.
I don't think there is a perfect ratio, is there? Like, you need to be stimulating yourself to work the things that you can get the most improvements on, and the ones that are specific to your race, right? I mean, obviously he's now going from a maybe half Ironman distance to a sprint distance, and so the zone that you're going to work at is significantly higher. However, and this is something that I also feel like I need to point out quite a lot to beginners, a sprint distance triathlon is an hour long. It's not a different energy system. It's still aerobic work. You're not going, the energy systems go from like under 30 seconds is a certain energy system. 30 seconds to 3 minutes is the next energy system. And everything beyond that is aerobic. So if you're doing an hour long race, it is still very much aerobic. And most of your training does still need to be long and slow and aerobic. However, obviously, a sprint distance is slightly higher intensity. So you do need to bring in some intensity. But generally, for all triathlons, it's a lot less than people.
It's not like we're comparing a 100-meter sprint versus a marathon.
Yeah,
it's
I know they call it a sprint triathlon.
Yeah, it's more like a marathon versus like a 5K or something like that. Yeah, so
just because it's a sprint triathlon doesn't mean it's actually a sprint and you need to be going onto the track and doing sprint reps.
Yeah. As I said, I've kind of found myself in a similar boat and I've been quite enjoying the training for it. What I would say is obviously they've done a lot of training. They've clearly got a lot of aerobic kind of base under their belt, which is great. I actually think they can now really just lean into the higher intensity work that perhaps they need for the sprint distance. So a lot of kind of threshold VO2 intervals. But I would I'd be cautious of just going in like too hard with that. Like,
yeah, I think when you say that, what a beginner is hearing is every session now needs to have some VO2 or some sprint, and that is a mistake. I think when Mark says a lot of VO2 or sprint, you're meaning like one VO2 session a week and one threshold session a week, maybe
more. It's sort of like per discipline. Yeah. And then obviously then in between that, supplementing it with some easy aerobic stuff. So we're kind of ticking all the boxes then. But it does sound like those longer rides, I don't think you need to be going out on a weekend and hitting out like a 3-hour long ride and a long run. You can from time to time and you will benefit from it, but they've clearly got a lot under.
So what is the ratio then? How much of your training, how many of your sessions need to have some high intensity sprint-ish level intensity in them? Everyone needs to have something, or are you talking like once a week in each discipline?
I was going to say 2/3 of each discipline. I was going to say
high intensity, 2/3. Yeah. I'm not sure I'd agree with that. I'd say more like 1/3 of each. Like
I was going to say 1/3, and then I was like, nah.
You need to be hitting those zones. You need to be hitting those zones. You need to be hitting those zones, and you need to be straining your body at that high intensity. But you can do that with a few short intervals once a week, and you will get the benefits. No, and the rest should be aerobic.
And you're absolutely right. This is me with my ridiculously unstructured training at the moment. But you want to make sure that those intense sessions are intense and you're hitting good quality in them. There's no point sort of turning up and like ending up in this weird grey zone because you're tired because you've been doing too much or trying to go too hard in too many sessions. So probably right, 1/3.
Yeah, sorry. I'd say 2/3 of it's still low aerobic work. It is still an aerobic sport. Okay.
Go on, next question then.
Next question. Jay Thomas asks, hoping for a little extra clarification on the 10% rule. Now, we've spoken about this quite a lot, haven't we? And we always, people talk 10% volume or 10% distance, and we always try to stress that it's 10% load. Mm-hmm. So he says, does load include new load from another discipline? For example, going from 20 to 22 kilometers, 3 runs a week, and adding cycling as well from 0 to 1 to 2 days. I run regularly and I just got an indoor bike trainer. Wanted to progress the running while newly training on the bike, but not sure if training load is sport/discipline specific as it relates to 10% rule. I'm newish to the sport and injured in December. The newbie gains are very addictive and dangerous. You guys are my inspiration. Thanks for all you do, Jamie. Okay. I'm going to say load is load, and that if you're adding load to bike, you are adding load to your body, and therefore you do need to factor that into the 10% rule. However, I will caveat that by saying that it isn't exactly the same. Your muscle system that you're using, your energy system that you're using is not necessarily the same for running as it is for cycling. And so it probably doesn't count as heavily, but the overall system load is still load. And so you have to be very careful with that.
I can't really argue with that. And I think the thing to stress, and I'm not sure this really helps our argument here, is the 10% rule is there just more of a general guide to make sure that people aren't overdoing it and getting injured. You don't need to like literally to the percent make sure that you're nailing this week in, week out. But I do think it is a good rule of thumb, particularly for weight bearing running. That is obviously the big area where people are going to really mess up, right? But equally, the same could happen on swimming and cycling. But I think,
I do think, though, that you have to be aware that when you bring in cycling, it does take something out of your running. You will run like you feel in a brick session, maybe to a lesser degree if you're doing it the following day or even 2 days later after a cycling session. it does flatten your legs a little bit. And that injury risk that you're talking about, where you're not as, is actually increased because you're flat from the cycle. So it is something that you have to be very aware of when you're adding cycling in. It does flatten your run, and running when you're flattened is definitely something that causes injuries in people.
A triathlon's a really complex sport when you try and sort of balance. Like when I've often been cycling really well, I haven't been running as well. When I've been running well, I haven't been swimming as well. When I've been doing loads of TT stuff on the bike, particularly early in the season, suddenly I start swimming really badly because my neck's down. Like, there's so many like knock-on consequences, and you're trying to balance this with triathlon. Yeah,
you got to be worried. You got to be careful of falling into those traps, but also at the same time use it to your advantage. Like I've had someone who's laid off from running, and they're absolutely stoked about how impressive their power numbers are on the bike, and in a way I want to tell them, that's because you're not running, but on the other hand I'm like, cool, let's focus on the positives for a little while and keep you motivated. I mean, it's the puzzle that is triathlon, I suppose. All right, one more question. Charlie May says, hi, Coach's Corner. A double question, if I may. I'm self-coached on my journey on my first 70.3 in Bolton this June, and I'm having some issues with know what type of wetsuit I should buy. I swim comfortably around 2 to 2 minutes 10 per 100 meters, but unsure if I should prioritize flexibility or buoyancy for that swim level. I have no idea if my legs sink or not. I just swim. And 2, how far out the event would you suggest I start training my nutrition?
Okay. Right. Is that it?
Which question are you going to ask?
Let's go for the wetsuit one initially. So 2 to 210 per 100. Mm-hmm. That's good. I would say probably for that speed, I'd bet that their hips and legs are sinking. Now, you're swimming really. No offense. Like you're swimming really well, and that's a really credible time per 100. But from what I've seen over the years, if you're around that sort of ballpark, you aren't neutral in the water. There is something that's dragging and holding you back. In fact, actually, a good test for this is actually just popping a pool buoy in whilst you're swimming in the swimming pool. And if you find that it doesn't really affect you and you swim the same speed, or if anything faster and you find it easier, your hips and your legs are sinking without it. Whereas if a good swimmer or someone that's swimming quite neutral and flat in the water puts a pool buoy in, it should actually be harder because you're eliminating the legs.
Do you think this is something that wetsuit companies are guilty of putting into people's heads unnecessarily? Because let's be honest, they make these wetsuits and they're making them for pros so they can lead out the water and they get their wetsuit first. Yeah. And they're going, this one's made for those good swimmers who are swimming really well, who need more flexibility and don't need so much buoyancy. And this one's made for our really poor swimmers and it's got lots of buoyancy. And people go, well, I'm not a really poor swimmer. Maybe I need the pro level one that's really flexible.
And also the marketing around those top suits, or you look on the website and they're the highest priced ones. You're like, well, obviously I want the best suit and it's got all the best tech in it and I want the most flexible suit. So it's easy to fall into that trap. But actually the suit that you might go fastest in is the slightly cheaper suit.
95% of people are going to get a benefit from that buoyancy in their legs rather than more flexibility and actually less buoyancy.
And what's interesting, we've seen even a lot of the top pros, when you actually dive in, or pardon the pun, but like look at the suits that they're using from the product range of the brands, quite often they're not going for the top ones, particularly the long distance pros, because they're just trying to save their legs. They just want their legs to float.
Save that energy.
So
the answer would be go for buoyancy then.
And actually most of the suits these days, the most buoyant suits are actually incredibly flexible. So,
exactly. Okay, the other question was when should he start training his nutrition for the event that's in multiple weeks? Yes, I'll agree with that. Yesterday, immediately. I mean, you don't have to be ridiculous about it and every single session be slamming gels every 15 minutes like you would in a race. But the more used to the race nutrition you are, definitely the better you're going to be off on race day. And that definitely means like not just in sessions trying the things you're going to use on race day, so you know the flavors are familiar to you and stuff, but also in those key sessions, making sure that before you do the session, you're doing the breakfast that you're going to have on race day and that kind of thing. Look at what time your race starts, like back to the first question, and make sure that you can eat the stuff that you're planning to eat on race day and that it doesn't mess up your stomach on race day and practice that.
I mean, there's so much to this. It's your body's ability to actually absorb the energy or the nutrients. So and it can improve at that, and also little things like figuring out how much you take on from a gel at a time and how much you're comfortable with taking on. What that nutrition is, maybe the brand, the flavor, if you have a preference, but also obviously the race, if you look ahead to the race, seeing what they have on course, you don't necessarily have to use the same brand, but it's just maybe trialing a little bit of that. So should you have to grab a gel whilst you're out on the bike course or the run course, you're happy with that, or you know what to expect. And then, eating in and around the race is also really important.
What about this gut training that everyone's talking about? How important is gut training? Do you need to be slamming 120 grams an hour while you're out there training, Mark? What do you reckon?
I did, like that.
How many did you take in a race? How many grams do you reckon was your level?
Well, back when we were racing, I don't think we even talked about grams. Just like 3 gels, gel every 20k, 20 minutes.
I think we spoke about grams, and it was like the upper limit was like 90 grams, and that was the really well trained. Now that is like now the lower limit, bottom of the line age group is doing 90 grams. The top pros are doing 140, 150, like crazy amounts. It's unbelievable.
So they're definitely, I mean, the science is there to show that training your gut does work. But I don't think you need to be striving for 120 grams of carbs per hour. Actually, as an amateur, if you're hitting somewhere around 90 grams of carbs per hour, you're doing really, really well. Just get practicing it in training as soon as possible.
And I'd say, I'd add to that, in training, it doesn't need to be the specific, really expensive race fuels all the time. Like for your long rides and stuff, have something in your gut, make sure you're eating, make sure you're drinking, not doing it fasted, but it can be more generic stuff you can get at the supermarket as opposed to premium race fuels.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. Well, that's it for our questions for this week. So hope you guys have enjoyed the podcast version of this, and Mark and I discussing it a little bit more and less off camera, discussing the answers and then giving them to you. If you have enjoyed it, hit the thumbs up button and comment down below. Tell us that if you prefer this version or the previous more polished version. And in future, we'll put it to a vote maybe.
We didn't argue this time.
We didn't argue, no. Send in some questions that you think we might argue about, because that'll really get fired up. We might get stuck on one question and literally just spend a half an hour arguing about one question. One of us slams the door and walks out. Anyway, didn't happen this time. We kind of agreed on all of them. Hope you guys enjoyed it. We'll see you again next week.